Tony's youngest son, and before kick anything off, I just want to say thanks everyone for coming today to celebrate my dad, and he would have loved to see everyone's face. I know some people traveled. One person actually only met him one time in a wine bar in Seattle Airport and drove you over to Indiana. That's cool. So, again, thank you. And before I get started, it's imperative to note, English was Big Tony's second language, which caused confusion on occasion. When I was about 12, my dad had just got home from the funeral, and I could tell he was a little distraught, and I asked him how it was going. And we talked about a few things, and one of the things he noted is he said one of his sons, he said a lot of really nice things about him in a bunch of different ways, and he asked if I could do the same thing. To which my response was, whoa. What does that mean? Did you mean like he said a bunch of adjectives, and my dad, that got a blank stare for my dad. And I was like, did he say things like father, son, great worker, lover of nature, husband, and things like that? And he goes, yeah. Much to my chagrin, because I wanted to do my own thing, but I thought I'll do both, so we've got a lot of ground to cover, and I'll get started. Here we go. Father, brother, chef, host, the host, boss, big feta, jovial, server, American, Greek, in that order. High-kicking Greek dancer until he tore his ACL doing that, then he stopped doing that. Original guy who made it rain, something you may not know that. Joke teller, laugher, quick to anger, quicker to smile. Gold pinky ring wearer, gold chain wearer. I did know he was Greek, so that's a bit redundant. Grandfather, best listener, who never heard anything. Couldn't be happier to see you. Lover, crier, your best friend. Unbelievably empathetic. Larger than life, the best guy ever. I assume most of you know my dad in this room. But people say that they came from nothing and not that it's a competition, but Big Tony came from nothing. In World War II, his dad was a traveling salesman. He was in a neighboring village. He had no idea that someone had a Greek communist guerrilla and killed a German soldier there the week prior, which means a curfew fell on this village. My dad's dad, Tony, was there, giving his donkey a drink of water, and one of his friends sprinted out to let him know that there was a curfew. They both got caught. They were put in front of a firing squad and executed. Depending on whose story you listen to, he was either not born yet or just born. And then a few weeks, months later, his entire village got put in front of a firing squad. Word came down to that firing squad, they told everyone to scatter. They burned the village to the ground. My dad spent the first 2 years of his life living in a cave. They got plumbing when he was around 9. A few years later, they got electricity. Big Tony came from nothing. My dad liked to tell us he was the best athlete in his class as well as the best student. Eventually it came out that he graduated with 9 people. but this fact was one of the many things pushing him to do bigger and better things and go across the world. Fast forward a bit, and thanks to some relatives already in Minnesota, he enrolled in the University of Mankato. Back in the day, you had to actually show up and register for classes in person, so he gets to the front counter. He's telling them information, but they get stuck on one tricky question. They ask him what his birthday is, and my dad says, "What's a birth date?" The guy at the counter is flabbergasted by this question. He goes, "It's the day you were born." And my dad goes, "How am I supposed to know that?" This caused much strife with the guy. And he goes, "How old are you?" My dad goes, 19. And he goes, "When do you turn 20? And he goes, "Oh, on January 1st, just like everybody else. And this was too much for this guy to handle. So he actually stands up from his chair and announces to the crowd, "Here, we have Tony Nicolo. He's from Greece, and he doesn't know his birthday." There's an eruption of laughter. Big Tony gets a little embarrassed, but he's a man of action. Calls his mom, says, "I need a birthday." And the Greek government very nicely makes a birth certificate for him. They're pretty sure he was born in the summer, and they had a pretty good idea what year he was born, so they gave him May 15, 19, and that was good enough for everybody. Big Tony did not graduate from college, which is actually good news. That's why we all know him today. He and his brothers were doing some innovative things in the restaurant industry, and they started to slowly build an empire. How could these immigrants from Greece navigate the lovely people of Minnesota? It's simple. Work ethic, their unrelenting thirst to make you feel like the most important person in the room, and family. While they were building this empire, Big Tony had a zest for tomfoolery, and let's be gentle and say he had a hard time focusing on business on occasion. Until his first son, also named Tony, was born. He saw his firstborn, and he knew he couldn't fail. I didn't see Big Tony a ton growing up, but around the time I was in first grade, it done. The way Big Tony loved us was making sure we never wondered where our next meal was going to come from. We could focus on school and sports. And we never lived in a cave. Big Tony created spaces where everyone felt welcome. Because he was rolling out the red carpet to his home. He also bought and sold properties where he willed more deals across the finish line via his charisma because the numbers made no sense because these bankers had faith in Big Tony. Now here's a guy who didn't know his birthday and came from nothing, living the American dream. It's funny, when I was growing up, I didn't think I wanted to be like my dad. I remember him trying to introduce me to countless people and me burying my head in his suit jacket, or watching him come home at 2 a.m. or later every night just so he could get up early the next day and do it all over again. Or walking around his restaurants, jumping with glee whenever any of his best friends would come into the restaurants. Or sitting with a complete stranger who now had a favorite restaurant because Big Tony was going to be there. Big Tony had this ability to connect with anyone, everywhere, regardless of your background, as long as you weren't Turkish. I'm just kidding, I actually didn't care. If you were Turkish, you probably came from nothing, and you were poor coming to this country, and he loved that for you. I learned a lot from him, and I'd be blessed if I had a fraction of his ability to connect with people or make them feel as welcome as he did. The loss of Big Tony, well, it's big. With that said, if he were here, again, he'd be elated to see everyone, and he'd be celebrating you all. If I didn't talk about my dad's love for laughter, it'd be a pretty big miss. Thus, I have one more story. My dad loved jokes, and he came home. We were actually home one Saturday morning, and he said, "Do you want to hear a joke?" "Yeah, absolutely." "Don't worry, I'm changing some of the vernacular around because we're in church." And so he begins to tell me, there is a bear and a bunny. They're next to each other, and they're pooping in the woods. The bear looks down at the bunny, and he says, "Do you ever have issues with feces sticking on your fur?" And the bunny, quite apprehensive, looks up and says, I can't say I have. The bear proceeds to pick the bunny up and wipe his butt with him. We explode in laughter, and then it kind of slows down. We make eye contact with each other, and he goes, "What does that joke mean?" Which makes me giggle, and so as many times I get to actually explain the joke to my dad. And the best part is, when I explain the punchline, is we had, the bunny had a misunderstanding with the bear, what it meant. And then when I'm done, he explodes in laughter again, because now he gets the joke. And then I explode in laughter. Big Tony always wanted to be there, having a good time. If you were having a good time, he was having a good time. That's why it's important for us to celebrate it today. We are going to have some family members speak. My mom's going to come up next, then my brothers. Then the mic is going to be open to the crowd. And if anyone here wants to talk about a fond memory you had of Big Tony, or some good old antics you got into, we'd love to hear you speak. And again, thanks for coming to celebrate my dad. It means the world to us. And then again, after this finishes up, anyone is welcome to join. We're going to go to the cemetery for the burial, which is going to be around 2.